The woman, a selfless and dedicated individual, completely overlooked the nagging pain that had started to plague her shoulder. Little did she know that what the doctor was about to discover would turn her world upside down. This woman had long been driven by an unwavering sense of purpose, an inner fire that burned bright with the desire to truly make a significant difference in the vast and complex world. For countless years, she had wholeheartedly dedicated her entire life to the noble cause of helping others. Her focus was particularly on those who resided in the underserved communities, the forgotten and marginalized people who so desperately needed a helping hand. Her most recent and arduous mission had led her all the way to Central Africa. There, in the remote and isolated villages, she took on the role of a nurse. These villages were far removed from the conveniences of modern life. With dirt paths instead of proper roads and limited access to essential resources, every day, she would rise before dawn, ready to face the challenges that awaited her. She would set out on long treks on foot, sometimes traversing through thick jungles or across arid plains, to reach the patients in need. The conditions were harsh, with the sweltering heat of the African sun beating down on her, and the ever-present threat of dangerous wildlife lurking in the shadows. But none of these obstacles could deter her. She worked tirelessly, using the meager medical supplies at her disposal to treat the local residents, whether it was diagnosing a common illness, dressing a wound, or providing much-needed medication. She did it all with a kind heart and a gentle touch. Despite the seemingly insurmountable challenges, she found an indescribable sense of fulfillment in her work. Each time she saw a patient's condition improve, or a child's smile return, she knew that she was truly making a tangible and positive impact on their lives. During her time in Central Africa, the woman was extremely meticulous about following every safety protocol to the letter. She was well aware of the grave risks of working in such an environment where infectious diseases ran rampant. The air seemed to be filled with invisible threats, and the slightest misstep could lead to disaster. So, she took every possible precaution to protect herself. Every morning before starting her rounds, she would carefully don her protective gear, making sure that every inch of her body was covered. Her hands were constantly sanitized, the alcohol-based solution stinging her skin but providing a small sense of security. She would also painstakingly ensure that all of her medical instruments were properly sterilized, boiling them for the appropriate amount of time or using special disinfectants. However, despite her best efforts, she knew deep down that no amount of caution could entirely eliminate the ever-present risk of exposure to dangerous pathogens. One fateful day, while she was in the middle of treating a patient suffering from a severe and mysterious infection, she suddenly felt a sharp, shooting pain in her shoulder. At first, she simply brushed it off as a minor strain, assuming it was just a result of the physically demanding nature of her work. After all, she had been carrying heavy medical bags, bending over patients, and walking long distances every day. Over the following weeks, the pain stubbornly persisted, but she was so focused on the needs of her patients that she chose to ignore it. She would grit her teeth and push through the discomfort, telling herself that it was nothing more than a passing nuisance. When her volunteer assignment finally came to an end, the woman returned to her hometown. She was physically and emotionally exhausted, but a deep sense of pride filled her heart when she thought about the work she had accomplished. She was looking forward to some much-needed rest and precious time with her family. However, shortly after her return, she noticed something quite unusual. A small cluster of red spots had appeared on her shoulder. At first glance, she casually assumed it was just a rash caused by the long and tiring journey back home. Or perhaps it was an allergic reaction to something she had encountered during her travels in Africa, like a new type of plant or insect. Without giving it much more thought, she applied some ointment that she had at home and tried her best not to worry about it. But as the days slowly passed, the spots began to grow larger and darker, and the pain in her shoulder intensified significantly. What had initially started as a minor irritation had now transformed into a source of constant discomfort and growing concern. Reluctantly, and with a sense of unease, the woman finally decided to see a doctor. For her, being on the receiving end of medical care was a completely foreign and uncomfortable experience. She had always been the one providing care, the one comforting and healing others. Now, the tables were turned, and it made her feel vulnerable. When she arrived at the clinic, the doctor took one look at the red spots on her shoulder and his expression immediately turned serious. The lesions were irregular in shape, with a deep, almost bruised appearance. The skin surrounding the spots was warm to the touch, a clear sign that something was not right. The doctor's voice grew grave as he began to explain that these symptoms could potentially indicate a very serious condition. He mentioned the possibility of a viral hemorrhagic fever, a group of terrifying illnesses that included well-known and deadly diseases like Ebola and Marburg virus. These diseases were not only highly contagious but also often fatal. The doctor knew that immediate and decisive action was of the utmost importance to prevent a potential outbreak that could have far-reaching consequences. The woman was completely stunned. During her time in Central Africa, She had heard countless stories about viral hemorrhagic fevers. She had seen the fear in the eyes of the locals and the devastating impact these diseases could have on entire communities, but never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that she might be infected. The doctor wasted not a single moment. He quickly picked up the phone and contacted the local health authorities, his voice urgent as he described the situation. Then, he reached out to the police. In no time, arrangements were made to transfer her to a specialized medical facility that was equipped to handle highly infectious diseases. The woman was placed in strict isolation, a cold and sterile room with only the sound of her own breathing for company. A team of experienced doctors and nurses, clad in full protective gear, immediately began running a series of comprehensive tests to determine the exact cause of her symptoms. The days that followed were a nightmarish blur of fear and uncertainty for the woman. She was consumed by a profound sense of guilt, constantly worrying that she might have unknowingly exposed others to a deadly virus. The thought of being the cause of harm to those around her was almost too much to bear. She also couldn't help but fear for her own life. She knew all too well how devastating these diseases could be, having witnessed the effects firsthand in Africa. As she anxiously waited for the test results, the medical staff treated her with the utmost care and compassion. They would come into her room, their voices soft and reassuring, telling her that they were doing everything humanly possible to help her and that she was in the best of hands. But despite their kindness, the woman couldn't shake the overwhelming feeling of dread that seemed to hang over her like a dark cloud. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the test results came back. To everyone's immense relief, the woman did not have a viral hemorrhagic fever. Instead, she was diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis, a rare but extremely serious bacterial infection that had the terrifying ability to destroy soft tissue. The woman felt a huge wave of relief wash over her, although she was well aware that the road to recovery was going to be long and difficult. Necrotizing fasciitis, often ominously referred to as the flesh-eating disease, is caused by bacteria that manage to enter the body through a wound or a break in the skin. In the woman's case, it was highly likely that the infection had started when she injured her shoulder while working in Central Africa. The bacteria had then spread rapidly, like wildfire through dry grass, causing the tissue in her shoulder to break down and ultimately leading to the formation of the red spots that she had noticed. If left untreated, the infection could have spread to other parts of her body, attacking vital organs and potentially leading to organ failure and, ultimately, death. Thankfully, the doctors had detected the infection in time. The woman was immediately rushed into emergency surgery. The operating room was a flurry of activity, with the surgeons working with precision and determination. They carefully removed the necrotic tissue, the dead and decaying parts of her shoulder, in an attempt to stop the infection from spreading any further. After the surgery, she was put on a rigorous course of antibiotics. The medications were strong, and they made her feel nauseous and weak at times, but she knew they were essential to eliminate any remaining bacteria. The recovery process was incredibly painful and exhausting, but the woman was a fighter. She drew strength from the unwavering support of her loved ones and the dedicated medical team who were by her side every step of the way. As time slowly passed, the red spots on her shoulder began to fade, and her wounds started to heal. Although she would always bear the physical and emotional scars of her ordeal, she was incredibly grateful to be alive. As she gradually regained her strength, the woman took the time to reflect on the valuable lessons she had learned from this experience. She realized, perhaps for the first time, just how important it was to listen to her body and not ignore any signs of discomfort or illness. She also came to understand the crucial importance of hygiene and infection control, not only in her work as a nurse but in her everyday life. The doctor who had treated her had emphasized the need for constant vigilance, especially when working in high-risk environments. He had patiently explained that while necrotizing fasciitis was rare, it could be effectively prevented by promptly cleaning and treating any wounds and seeking medical care at the very first sign of infection.